February 1945, the Soviet Union. Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin, the heads of government of the United States, the United Kingdom, and the Soviet Union, meet at Yalta in Crimea to discuss the post-war reorganization of Germany and Europe. One of the key points of their meeting is that after the war is over, Nazi leaders will be found and prosecuted. In November 1945, the Tribunal of American, Soviet, British, and French judges and prosecutors in Nuremberg starts a trial of senior Nazis, accusing them of crimes against peace, war crimes, and crimes against humanity, namely murder, extermination, enslavement, and the deportation of civilian populations. Less than a year later, on the 1st of October 1946, the verdicts are given, and 12 of the 22 defendants are sentenced to death by hanging. Little do they know that they will be executed by a man with no pre-war experience as a hangman. This American master sergeant profoundly hates Germans, and will make the high-ranking Nazis whom he will hang on the 16th of October 1946 die a slow and painful death. His name is John C. Woods. John Clarence Woods was born on the 5th of June 1911 in Wichita, Kansas, in the Midwest region of the United States. He was raised by his grandmother after his parents divorced when he was only 2 years old. Woods attended high school for only 2 years, dropping out in December 1929, after which he joined the U.S. Navy. After a few months of service, however, he left without permission. He was then dishonorably discharged from the Navy with a diagnosis of psychopathic inferiority without psychosis, a term first used in Germany in the 1880s to describe criminals with violent and antisocial characteristics. Woods then returned to Kansas, where he took on various construction and farm-related jobs during the Great Depression. For a time, he also worked with the Civilian Conservation Corps, a public work relief program, but was again dishonorably discharged after 6 months. He later married a nurse, Hazel Chilcott, but the marriage did not produce any children. The Second World War started on the 1st of September 1939, when Nazi Germany invaded Poland. Although the United States supported the Allies by providing them with weapons and resources, they did not actively enter the conflict until Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor on the 7th of December, 1941. This surprise assault rallied the American public and led the US to declare war on Japan, with Germany and Italy soon declaring war on the United States in response. As American industry ramped up production, the United States became a critical supplier of arms, vehicles, and other essentials for the Allied forces. US troops were first deployed in North Africa in Operation Torch in 1942, helping to secure Allied dominance in the region before moving on to campaigns in Italy and the Pacific. When the United States entered the Second World War, Woods enlisted in the US Army. Technically, he should not have been able to do so, given his prior dishonorable discharge from the Navy, but no one seemed to have checked his records. In 1943, he was assigned to Company B of the 37th Engineer Combat Battalion in the 5th Engineer Special Brigade. By 1944, the Allies, with the United States and the United Kingdom in the lead, were preparing for a massive assault on Nazi-occupied Western Europe. On the 6th of June 1944, under the code name Operation Overlord, US, British, and Canadian troops crossed the English Channel and landed on the beaches of Normandy in France. This operation became known as D-Day and was the largest amphibious invasion in history, deploying more than 160,000 Allied troops on air, land, and sea. 50,000 vehicles, some 5,000 naval craft, and more than 11,500 aircraft supported the initial invasion. D-Day was one of the main turning points of the Second World War. During the invasion, Woods was not wounded, though many of his comrades were killed. This experience motivated him to seek ways to avoid frontline service in the future. Shortly after, the US Army announced it was seeking an executioner, asking if anyone had prior experience. In 1944, 96 American soldiers were awaiting execution for crimes like desertion, murder, and rape, but had no American hangman to execute them. Woods volunteered, claiming he had hanged 2 men in Texas and 2 in Oklahoma. However, no evidence suggests that the US Army attempted to verify Woods' claims. If anyone from the Army had checked, they would have found that both Texas and Oklahoma had switched to electrocution during the period Woods had claimed to be a hangman. The last hanging in Texas was in August 1923, when Woods was 12, and Oklahoma's last hanging took place 3 months before he was born. The only hanging in Oklahoma after that was under federal jurisdiction in 1936, with all other executions using the electric chair from 1915 to 1966. In reality, Woods had no documented pre-war experience as a hangman at all. After his acceptance, Woods was promoted from private to master sergeant. His monthly salary increased from $50 to $138, the equivalent to nearly $2,500 today. Woods served as the primary executioner in the hangings of 34 US soldiers in France between 1944 and 1945, and assisted in at least 3 others. US Army reports suggest that Woods participated in at least 11 botched hangings of US soldiers between 1944 and 1946. The Second World War in Europe ended on the 8th of May, 1945. After the war, Woods initially executed several Germans convicted of killing American airmen and continued his duties in various locations. Following the first Dachau trial, he hanged 14 members of the Dachau concentration camp's guard staff at Landsberg prison. His involvement soon caught the attention of Lieutenant Stanley Tills, who would manage executions after the Nuremberg Trials. Soon after, Woods took on the role of executioner for high-ranking Nazi war criminals who were responsible for the deaths of millions. The Nuremberg Trials brought 21 prominent Nazi officials to justice for their roles in war crimes, including the Holocaust, which led to the deaths of 6 million Jews. Of these defendants, 12 were sentenced to death, with 10 ultimately hanged. Hermann Goering, head of the German Air Force, was also sentenced to death but committed suicide the night before his execution. Another defendant, Martin Bormann, Hitler's private secretary, was tried in absentia as he was missing and presumed dead. In the early morning hours of the 16th of October 1946, Woods carried out the executions of 10 Nazi criminals in the gymnasium of the Nuremberg prison. There were strong indications that Woods intentionally miscalculated the length of the ropes, causing several of the convicted Nazis to suffer a slow, painful suffocation instead of the intended quick death by neck break, as regulations required. In some cases, their death struggles continued for nearly half an hour, and were reported to be deeply disturbing for those present. Moreover, the trapdoor was too small, causing some of the executed men to suffer bloody head injuries, including broken noses as they fell. Although the US Army denied any wrongdoing, photographs of some of the deceased, such as former Minister of the Interior Wilhelm Frick and Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel, clearly displayed battered and bloody faces. In the case of Julius Streicher, the former Nazi propaganda publisher and passionate anti-Semitic ideologue, the execution was notably problematic. American reporter Howard K. Smith wrote that the initial drop was not fatal and that witnesses could hear him groaning. Woods then came down from the platform and disappeared behind the black curtain that concealed the dying man. Abruptly, the groans ceased and the rope stopped moving. Smith and the other witnesses were convinced that Woods had grabbed Streicher and pulled down hard, strangling him. Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel suffered even more and was reported to have taken 28 minutes to die. Smith believed that Woods hated Germans and that a small smile crossed his lips as he pulled the hangman's handle. An official medical inspection of the process was said to have revealed a shambles. According to Lieutenant Stanley Tills, who was coordinating the hangings at Nuremberg, Woods had deliberately placed the coils of Streicher's noose off-center to ensure that he would not experience a quick death. Immediately after the executions, Woods became an international celebrity and openly expressed pride in his performance. He stated, "I hanged those 10 Nazis, and I am proud of it. I wasn't nervous. A fellow can't afford to have nerves in this business." Josef Malta, the US Army military policeman who held the noose as John C. Woods carried out the executions, said 50 years later, "It was a pleasure doing it. I'd do it all over again." Although Woods described the Nuremberg defendants as arrogant men who really deserved hanging, he also acknowledged that they faced death bravely. Woods later claimed in newspaper interviews that he never saw a hanging go off any better, and expressed that the assignment at Nuremberg was one he really wanted to do. His commitment was so strong that he insisted on staying in Germany rather than returning home. He also boasted of a $2,500 offer, equivalent to more than $40,000 today, from a man in Havana, Cuba, who wanted to buy one of the ropes that had been used during the executions. Woods also claimed that after he began executing German war criminals, attempts had been made on his life. He stated that someone tried to poison him in Germany, and he also reported being shot at in Paris. Following this, Woods reportedly carried two .45 caliber pistols and would declare, "If a German wants to get me, he better do it with his first shot. I was raised with a pistol in my hand." Woods would brag to people that he had executed as many as 347 men, but in reality, it was closer to 90 people. Woods announced his retirement from being an executioner 6 days after his wife Hazel found out about it. His sudden fame led to widespread media coverage, which ultimately revealed the nature of his work to his family. His wife later mentioned that Woods had never disclosed this part of his duties to her, and the first she knew of it was when his photo appeared in the newspapers. However, Woods also told reporters he might return to Germany in some capacity, noting that more than 120 war criminals were still awaiting execution, including 43 sentenced for their involvement in the Malmedy massacre, where 84 American prisoners of war were killed by Waffen-SS soldiers. Claiming a personal motivation, Woods stated that he had some buddies killed in that massacre, and boasted that he would come back just to get even for them. The October 1946 executions were Woods' last, before he was reassigned to an engineering unit, eventually stationed on the Marshall Islands in the Pacific. The island housed German and American scientists and engineers working under Operation Paperclip to advance U.S. aerospace and atomic programs. John C. Woods was 39 years old when on the 21st of July 1950, he died from an electric shock while repairing a lighting system. Some friends suspected foul play, suggesting that the German scientists, angered by his execution methods, had tampered with the wiring as an act of revenge. However, the US Army officially ruled his death an accident. Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.